Well, it's truly a privilege to be here this morning, not only, you know, great group of people or I'm bragging, okay? But anyhow, with Gil Johnson, who is truly knowledgeable in everything Prevost. I always tell him that my success has been a result of his comments and his suggestions and help, and going back and searching all the forums and such for comments that he's made. That's where I've learned so much.
So he's like the superhero and you're the sidekick?
Yeah, at best. At best, I'm just lucky to be standing beside him.
So, like we said yesterday, we're going to answer all the questions that were submitted in advance, and we'll go through those. So that's the only questions to be asked.
You start with the meaning of life.
Well, there's so many systems, so many different coaches, rather than trying to go through something specific. We'll kind of throw this out to you. What do you want to know? What do you want to hear about? What's your questions? All right,
Well, I know what his answer is, so Jeff is not allowed to comment before Gil makes his recommendation. My country coach, as you're aware, has an auxiliary air system with a compressor.
Yep.
The one that was in there, which I have replaced, did not have an air dryer on it.
They don't.
They don't need an air dryer.
They typically don't. And that's what that Prevost water separator is for. So if you tie to the Prevost side, that's the way to keep the Prevost side from getting wet.
Okay.
But seldom will you find a dryer on the auxiliaries of the converter coaches. A few do, and those that have like June air compressors, they'll have a dryer and an oil separator on those. But generally speaking, no dryers on the converter installed.
On the same topic of the auxiliary, we had an issue recently where when I had the auxiliary, when the bus was stopped, turned off, if I had my auxiliary air compressor on, and my bus will bleed, I have leaks in the bus bleeds down, rear is reporting 40, 50 pounds, the front 40, 50 pounds, maybe even close to zero. If I turn that aux compressor on, it builds up pressure not only in the aux tank, all three tanks come up simultaneously, it'll go up to 100.
Okay.
And I'm told that that is impossible to happen because they're separate systems.
Yeah, it really shouldn't, but it depends on where they plumbed it in. So I guess a good thing for everybody to understand is a little bit
So
of
do I have a problem, or is that okay?
you or your coach.
Well, okay.
There you go, yeah. Big coach for what?
I guess everybody knows Ken, huh?
Party foul. And my brother-in-law.
Brother-in-law.
I think it's important for everybody to understand a couple of basics on the air systems on the coaches. Obviously, they stop our coaches, so it's pretty damn important. But there's some protection valves and ways that this works. And so when you look at your air systems, when you're driving down the road, you got this big compressor on your engine that can supply volumes and pressure. And that goes to what's called a wet tank, and there it goes to the rear brakes, and then it goes to the front tanks, and then it goes to the Prevost auxiliary, and then it may go on to the converter side. So in each one of those steps, there's check valves or protection valves, because we don't want to lose our brakes, right? So our protection valves sit between braking and everything else. So in the event that everything else just has a catastrophic failure, it'll come down to whatever that protection valve is rated at. So if you were to go in your coach and open up that aux tank drain that's up there underneath the driver's area and watch your aux tank go all the way to nothing, you shouldn't see your brake systems go down. And they can't go down below the protection valve, which is about 60 pounds. And the main brakes, which are your rear, have a check valve to the front. So you can lose air in the front brakes, and you shouldn't lose air in the rear brakes. And when we see air pressure go down, I guess the first thing, on your aux systems, when the air pressure goes down, don't panic. Because if those that want to try to get their aux system to be totally leak-free, you got big checkbooks. Because you're going to spend a lot of time and you're going to get it perfect, and then next week it's not perfect again. So there is some degree of acceptable leak, that who cares? So what's acceptable? Running down the road, if if you watch your aux gauge and that aux gauge sits at 120 or whatever it is, and it don't go down, just doing the 20-pound swing, whatever that leak is, who gives a crap? Because it's not so much that it has any effect on the operation of the coach. Yeah, we all love our coaches to be leak-free, but at the end of the day, there's a lot going on. And like I said, you can spend a lot of money. And all these people out there that talk about this so-called zeroing out that don't really zero them out. Zeroing out is replacing every fitting and every valve in there. And some will go, yeah, I replaced every Norgren valve in there, but did you really? Did you replace the 5-port manifold down on the level lobe? Probably not. So even those that say they've zeroed them out, very, very few did. Some level of leakage is fine. Brake system leakage over time, you park your coach and your brakes go down, don't be overly alarmed. Yeah, some people will stay up for weeks. But again, it's operationally, is that a big deal? No. And one other thing, and many people don't do this, is your brake system holding air? If you say yes, well then that means that you probably did that little DOT bleed down test. If you don't know what that is, then you don't know whether or not your brakes are holding air. So that test is pretty simple. Many people don't know how to do it, so it's as simple as just airing up your coach, having it sitting on something level, release the parking brake, engine off, push the brakes and hold them. Hold them for 3 minutes and you really shouldn't see the gauges move. If they don't move, then you can tell me your brake system's is sound. But other than that, you're not putting air through the brake relays to the brake chambers, so you don't really know. So those that say it holds up for weeks, well, okay. It really matters on the application. And most people don't change brake chambers. Now, that's okay, as long as you're doing the test to make sure that they're okay. And oftentimes that test is not done. It's required to all the commercial guys, but most RV people probably have never even heard of it. So you got that test to do, and then the other test is to apply your brakes. Just keep feathering them, watching your gauge. Your brake is released. Watch the gauge go down, and you'll start to hear your parking brake make sound, air coming out of it. And before you get to 0, that should set. If it doesn't, that's a problem too. Because at the end of the day, if you were to catastrophically lose all your air, you pretty much want to stop. So that's the test to see whether or not that parking emergency brake valve actually works the way it's supposed to. So those 2 tests, people need to do them. If you got a newer coach, it's really, really simple because you can do that bleed down test from the dash. But you know, for those of us that don't have a pretty new coach, we got to do it the old school way.
On that auxiliary generator we're talking about anyway, every different converter has told us different things when we built the buses. Country Coach said, run it all the time, it works your leveling system too when you're stopped. Marathon wasn't sure whether we should leave it on or off. Light says don't run it, except to tighten the belts on the motor. So, does it not have any effect with the leveling system on some brands, and some brands it does?
Well, that's true, but when it comes to auto leveling systems, they're kind of nice and convenient. Go ahead and use them, get yourself leveled, and then turn them off. You know, because if you got one like most of them have, like the Country Coaches had and others, every 15 to 30 minutes it wakes up and goes, if I'm not level, I'm going to redo it. Some of the ones that were built by converters, they're always checking. You can walk in the door and it tries to level. What's the point? So if you turn your auto leveling system off and you can't maintain level, fix the freaking problem, right? So you got a leak somewhere. And as far as the converter aux air systems, I think all but one converter ties it into Prevost all the time. So Marathon, they got a little label on theirs that says, don't open this unless your Marathon compressor failed. So those with Marathons, let me know how your slide seal stays inflated. So there is a workaround to that to make sure you're at least putting air to your slide seal. And I think they've actually done it on their newer coaches, but I mean much newer.
But it is accurate saying when you run that compressor, it does tighten the belts on the motor before you start it.
Well, that depends on the coach too, right? But yeah, so XLs didn't work exactly the same ways as H's. And that whole thing about the belts not being tight, you know, started up, but they'll inflate. Don't sit there accelerating or anything, just give it time. Yeah, just realize that in the commercial world, they don't have an auxiliary compressor. So when they started up and they got that belt flopped, and they got the belt flopped for however much time it takes to get to pressure. And as air builds up, and you can see this on your gauge, after you've done that brake test and you now have 0 in all your gauges, start the engine back up and you'll see the brakes start to come up to about 60. And once that happens, you'll see your aux start to come up. You won't feel your seat move yet, because the next system to get air is gonna be your suspension. And then once the suspension is satisfied, then all else gets air. Yeah.
So you're saying turn the auto level switch off after you've leveled it and then just shut it off?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's new info. So just like, so I'd go and I set it, I don't ever go, so I crank up plus lead. And you're right, it'll go and you'll, every now and then it'll redo it. But ideally, you could do it, just turn it off and be done with it, once it levels.
Yeah, and if your coach doesn't maintain level, then fix the leak in the suspension system. And oh, by the way, you can dump all the air, okay? We've done the whole brake test, we have no air in our coach. How come the coach didn't fall down? Because the suspension system is isolated from all others.
Yeah. Press that button one time or twice?
Well, in your coach, I think it's 2 times to do the auto level, and then the off button down on the lower left, I think, in your coach.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so first of all, I wanna thank everybody, especially you guys, for all the input when we post and we're having issues, and you guys jump in and repairs these things, that's especially for us newbies. I have a brand new, headhunter sim modules that were just put in, calibrated, system worked fine, 1,500 miles, and 2 months later, I got no display inside on the gauges, the fill levels. I've talked to Headhunter. I've used their video that shows how to calibrate based on the prior model that might have been in there. In my case, we don't know what the prior model was, so they said try these 3 different ones. And going through their video, to be able to get to where you can then select the model based on the light color.
Yep.
I can't get any one of my 3 brand new modules to get to that mode where I can select and go through and try to do that, to program it for a specific model. Is there something that I'm just
I don't think we came here to talk shit, so we're gonna move on to another topic. But those.
I retract my statements about the appreciation. just saying, you know.
Those SIM-Us, as they refer to those new ones,
Yes, the new ones.
they are a little complex, and if you don't know what was in there, I'm not sure how you're gonna,
Well,
I
I
guess you're
called
just.
Headhunter and told them, and they
Yes.
said, try ZR, ZS, and one of the Qs. But the problem is that following their video and their procedure, I can't get any one of those 3 new modules to enter the mode where you can then select, move through the process to find the appropriate models to try.
I've done one of those once, so.
If you disconnect the power to it.
I even
completely do.
disconnected power to one of them, and cause I also have the instructions how to set up it. First time disconnecting power, disconnecting tube, I got my air out, I blew all 3 tubes, I could hear them gurgling in the tanks. So I know that I don't have blockage on the tubes. I'm kinda at my wit's end. So I even had my wife come out and look at the video and make sure that I was following the procedure properly and, you know, not missing something. She said, no, you're done. I said, okay.
And for those that have those units, and don't have a metal tank, you know, Headhunter makes good stuff, don't get me wrong, but don't fix it. Just buy the sea level system and call it done. But if you got a metal tank, you don't have any choice. Cause that unit was probably $750.
What's that?
Your SIM-U was probably about $750.
Yeah, I know, and I had 3 of them put in.
Yeah, well, you could've got an entire sea level system for less, much less. But again, if you got metal tanks, you don't have a
That's what
choice.
was in there, and the tapes on the sides of the tanks, it was part of my French, but kind of what you were talking about when I talked about shit today, so. So I that's why I'm throwing it out there, just to get feedback.
Yeah, I'd have to look at that procedure again, because like I said, I've done it once. in the response.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, so when on that drawing, you'll see a single 1 amp fuse going to the idiot lights. You don't know whether that's fused or not. I certainly assume it is, because that's on the Prevost side. But if you are to fuse that at the monitor, then put 1/2 amp fuses in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a headhunter tool which works flawlessly, but the only nightmare that I have is what happens when it doesn't. Is there a kit or something I could buy from Headhunter just to kind of have something in the shelf? If it quit working, or is it just don't worry about that, worry about something else?
Those things are pretty reliable. You know, you get stuff in them, and there should be a valve that you can get to, that you put a screwdriver in and spin it to get whatever debris might have been holding that pump up. But they're pretty reliable. So I'm not sure I'd carry a spare.
Where is the debris?
Water filtration is critical to that
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, and it has to have 50 PSI to operate. Anything less than that, it won't do anything. That's why you have to use the headhunter pump even on city water.
It's like almost impossible.
Isn't that what you just heard, pressure, that valve?
You're talking about that side pump where
It's similar to an irrigation pump.
yeah,
Inside of
and
there,
that's
there's
like
a screen.
the plumbing to
clog.
get at that. There's an inlet strainer. It's almost impossible unless you were gonna, at least on a Featherlight, because they have both. I just looked at that. They're 2 plumbed right in a row in a line, and there is no room. You have to cut all of that out to take it out. There was no one thinking about maintenance on a Featherlight.
Some things are easier on some coaches than others.
Yeah, because there is an inline strainer, a cone-shaped strainer that supposedly catches all the stuff. But boy,
You can't have a strainer between the toilet and the pump.
on the inlet side of the water feed, there is a.
Oh,
there is
the
a
water
cone-
to
yeah,
the pump.
Absolutely.
I'm
That's what
talking about
catches
I'm
everything.
talking about the discharge.
Oh,
So discharge is where you typically have the problem, and something ended up getting down in there and the impeller, it's not doing its thing, you just gotta manually get it turned.
We just replaced the face of our Headhunter pump that pushes all the water, and when we replaced it, for whatever reason, it had a bunch of sand and debris in the line that blew into every outlet, which we had to then go and take every outlet apart, got sand out of it, maybe it's because we weren't Destin, but took sand out of it, had to get this in there, had to get that Destin on it. And one Headhunter toilet started to flush slowly. I mean, right here, it was flushing slowly, and so we, eventually, after we flushed it multiple times, it came back to the thrust that we had. Well, so we started looking at the inline strainer, and,
Well, we think we found it.
well, I found the
Just
pump.
disconnected and blow on
Like, we just disconnected, but it was so tightly plumbed, and it's right by the hose, above the hose reel, it is so.
Super hard. I really like a water softener so you don't get all the calcium built up in your lines and appliances and
Don't you have a pre-filter coming in?
such.
it. And two, you all.
Got a pre-filter. It was.
Water anyway.
Do those little carbon filters you get in line at Walmart, do they do any pre-filtering, or is it just?
Well,
Sediment filters.
Yeah, you're looking for sediment, so you don't need carbon, you just need the depleted paper.
But I mean, if you're doing that carbon thing, are you getting the benefit of a filter out of that?
Except for if you do have water that's got a lot of stuff in it, you're probably gonna find flow restriction, because those get clogged up faster than the depleted paper ones.
We found that.
Mike, you need it?
Yeah, I just, so, on my dash, I had a big red square light up, and after tracing it down, because it wasn't Prevost, it was a Marathon, you know, it's one of the lights they took over in the dash. There's 2 of them, it was one of my alternators. So my confusion is, it came on, tested the alternators, one didn't test right, I swapped it out, light didn't go away, and I'm watching my charging. So when I'm not running my generator, I'm just going down the road and running off my inverters, I have a meter in the back, I can see, you know, what my voltage is, and it starts at, when it's good, it's at 26.1, but I've seen it at over 28, and when I talk to Verify, they're like, well, you got a 28, or it's around 26, depending on what you have, so I'm really confused. Because the light's still on, and I don't think I've charged it going down the road, at least one of them is not. I haven't gone back and tested that alternator yet, but when I put it in, I tested it, and it was pumping out 28 volts. So I was really confused that now I've reconstant 26.1, unless I unhook shore power, I don't run the generator, I'm running down the road, I can watch it decline, or if I'm just boondocking, I watch it decline, but that's kind of normal to not charge anything. But when I run down the road, I figured I should be charging off those two alternators, right? Two 24-volt alternators. They should be charging at all times, charging my batteries, my house batteries, right? That's what I think.
Yeah, so that was, all those alternators are 28 volts. That doesn't mean they're gonna put out 28 volts, but they can and will, depending on
I've
the.
seen it do it, and
Yeah.
I was just confused as why.
Yeah, so your detection circuit, I think it's in your first bay. The marathon detection circuit that lights that unlabeled light that you're talking about,
Yeah,
that's looking at the output of the two alternators.
yeah.
That detection circuit may just be at too low of a voltage. So if your generator's running, then you're probably gonna find that you're running closer to 26 volts.
Well, yeah, but when I fire my generator up, that light goes away on my head. So I can run down the road, I'll fire up the generator, I'm running, boom, light goes on. So it's charging. So they shut that generator off. So I'm not sure what else to look at. You know, I will go test it out there, make sure it's pumping, you know, the amperage out of it, but, I don't know why it wouldn't. It was when we put it in, you know.
So you were checking for voltage or amperage?
I'm sorry, voltage.
Yeah, so if you clamp each one of those, but I believe that the marathon detection circuit is solely based on voltage. And it's using the relay contact out of the alternator to make sure that there's an output.
Would that be under the drivers?
I wanna say it's in the first bay.
The first day?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's up at, most of them, it's in the ceiling of the first bay where their little detection circuit is to light that unlabeled light.
Okay.
But as long as your voltage is fine,
Yeah.
you know, it's a nuisance to look at a light that's red, right? But
Yes.
it's not an issue. And 26 volts would be about as low as you'd see that going. And,
Yeah, it goes, the lowest I've seen it run is 26.1.
yeah, that's actually pretty low, because generally you're gonna be at, 13 and a half or 27 at your low end.
So what, is there some, so besides that relay, I find most of my relays and stuff are under the drivers, you know, that bay. The first, I call it first bay where, you know, I've got all the electronics in there.
Well, under the driver's seat, you know, it's not gonna be there. I'm pretty sure it's in the first bay. Well,
First bay.
and they move stuff
When
around.
you say
so
first bay, is that on the drive side or third?
I think it's in the middle of the first bay in the ceiling.
Okay.
But, you know, to find the specific piece in any marathon, it's best to give them a call, because, you know, they move things around.
So I'd call them and ask them for the relay for the,
It's a detection circuit that's
Detection
driving a
circuit.
relay
okay.
for those two alternators.
Okay.
And then, you know, the
If that's
Prevost,
out, would it also be causing my batteries not to charge, running down the road?
well, they are charging, but not a hell of a lot. I mean, at 26 volts, you're barely putting
Okay.
anything into them.
Does he have a battery isolator?
And that relay could cause that.
Adjustable voltage regulators.
They're internally regulated. They don't have external regulators.
I had that problem.
A black box that's got a couple of LEDs on it, and that's how they determine which alternator is working or not.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But
Is
Marathon
that in the
doesn't use
engine
that.
compartment, or is that just a piece of test equipment?
It's what lights the lights on the dash. It doesn't serve any other purpose.
Okay.
I'd be running down the road 3 or 4 hours running the generator. And my low bat light would come on the dash. And it was explained to me that the coach was designed to run with 2 ACs, reefer, without the generator on. And that the alternator would be enough to keep the batteries charged going down the road. If I threw a third AC or a fourth AC on, then I would need to fire up the generator. So they put in an alt switch so that if I'm running down the road, we usually always run our generator in the past, different types of RVs. So that we've got AC, we've got two reefers, the one in the basement, the one in the kitchen, two ACs running, and I have a switch to turn off the feed from the alternator out of the engine to the batteries, and now I don't have any low bat light. Because it was explained to me there's some type of a conflict going on, and the battery voltage was dropping and wasn't being charged because of what was coming out of the generator versus what was coming out of the alternator in the engine. Is that correct or incorrect?
Well, you shouldn't get to a low battery voltage state if you've got a charging source. So with the generator running, you have a charging source, which is your inverters.
Right.
But that's gonna keep the battery voltage higher than the low battery alarm. You know, sometimes you can get conflicts, but they shouldn't do that. But weirder things have happened. I mean, this seems strange to me. And what most people would do or should do, when you're going down the road and you're gonna run air conditioners off your inverters, turn on your auto start for your generator. And once the batteries deplete to whatever, you know, they're gonna start the generator. And that's really important for newer coaches that got 14,000 watts of inverter power, and they can power absolutely everything in the coach when you're going down the road. You can only take so much power out of those batteries before they got nothing left. So,
Right.
you know, always have that automatic generator system
But
on.
we had the generator running down the road and we still get the low bat light.
Yeah, I'm not real sure why you're doing that. Because the voltage coming out of your inverters is greater than that threshold to trigger that alarm.
And most people forget about, that we should just be doing more routinely than.
Alcohol?
I can answer one of those earlier, is your cabin filter, check it out. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, if you got bus air, I bet a lot of people will never change the bus air filter.
I've cleaned mine, but I can't get it out.
And don't forget your dash air filters. Those dash air filters really overuse the body.
Yeah, and another filter people don't even know they have, and it gets the dirtiest of all of them. If you've got Prevost Dash Air with the auxiliary, so there's a filter that's at the top of the top step before you go up all the way up into the coach.
Is that what that is? That's for the aux?
Yeah, yeah. So all dirt gets right there.
That's what we were seeing, Mike. Those fins up there,
Yeah.
that's for your aux air behind the seats. You know, on your controller, you have that aux button to the right. That's on the air.
You hear what it's supposed to, but also that water separator that's under the driver's seat,
Yeah.
periodically open that up and see how much water you get out of it. And if you get more than an ounce, then you're probably not doing it frequently enough. And whatever that frequency is, it's how your coach is done. If you own a Marathon and you keep that switch off, you'll never have water there. But everybody else where converter air and Prevost air comes together, make sure you're opening that up and getting that water out. And as far as the rest of the systems, you know, there's some people who go, well, I gotta put lanyards on my wet tank and my rear brakes, my front brakes so I can drain them. They're probably truckers. You don't have to worry about that. If you got water in those systems, you haven't been managing your dryer maintenance. They should never have any moisture in them.
Most people just plug them up. Put 'em-
No, that's the ping tanks.
Oh,
Yeah, that's the ping tanks for the bags, but the main brake tanks. And whoever's doing your grease, whoever's lubing your chassis, make sure they do open the valves on all your main tanks and drain them.
How can, on that subject of lubing your chassis, is there a document somewhere that tells us how many shocks you should put, like a tie rod in, or a U-joint, or something?
Much less than everybody thinks.
Yeah, 'cause-
So if it's got a grease boot on it, you just wanna see it just move a little bit.
Stop.
You know, some people think you put grease in until they come out. Well, no, you don't do that. And when it comes to greasing, there's generally a lube chart that's in that front door underneath the driver's area. If not, it's in the manual. But the fittings that are almost always overlooked are the ones for the lift chambers for the tag axle, the one that's for the swing arm for the fan assembly, and the one that's for the drag link at the steering box. Those are generally always forgotten.
On that electric clutch, is there a better mousetrap now? Has somebody come up with a better way, or is it still very unreliable? And, I mean, is anyone making a,
Yeah, so Prevost offers two different fan clutches now. One that's expensive and one that's damned expensive. So they're using Kitmasters and whoever the other company is. The more expensive clutch is frankly a much better clutch. They used to use them years ago and then switched. But yeah, if you get the option, do that. If you still have an old school one, it doesn't matter if it's old school. If you have one that fails, I've had pretty damn good luck out of profandrive.com. They're out of Atlanta, and that's all they do is rebuild electric clutches for buses for a lot less money. So if you do take yours off and put a new one on, don't discard your old one. Send it in and they'll put new bearings and coil in it, and you'll have an operational spare.
And that operational spare, typically that design lasts how long?
Mine's been in my bus for 5 years.
5 years.
It should last as long as a new one. They replaced every part that potentially could fail. And for those that carry spares, if the spare is easily installed, install the spare. Because the problem you have is when you need your spare and you put it in and it's like, oh, wrong one doesn't fit or doesn't work. So the school of thought is to take that operational spare that you got, put it in, it works, I know it works. I'm gonna take the one out that I know did work when I took it out. So if I ever need something again, I know for a fact, not only that this fits, but it did work. Now, obviously, some parts are far too complex to be doing that, but if an operational spare is easily installed, install it.
Hey, Gil. A lot of us have cruise airs, and we've had a lot of fun with those over the years. Anybody played around with the new units that were introduced that you saw at
We've installed 2 of them. Yeah, they're much quieter. There is a little gotcha. I gotta work with them. So they didn't use a solid state relay to drive it. They used a conventional relay. And much to my surprise, the cruise air control board doesn't support that much current. So we actually went through a couple of cruise air boards finding out where the issue was. So
okay.
we had to front end their relay with a solid state relay. And I'm sure they said that they did that because in some configuration the solid state relay wouldn't work. So we had that issue that's easily overcome. And if you got a Liberty in which the units are on the driver's side, right behind that panel, easy to get to, the one that sits on the lower right-hand side, the bolts on the top of the unit prevent it from sliding in.
On the new unit.
On a new unit. But otherwise,
The two
What's
that
the
are
unit
stacked.
y'all are using?
I'm sorry,
What's the new units that y'all are putting in?
Aqua Air. Yeah. It's a direct replacement. It's not new technology or anything else. But you know, it's brand new
And they're performing much better than our cruise airs. Does anybody
We need that.
well, so much better. If I had a brand new Cruise Air, the thing would be rated at 14,000 BTU, but I'm telling you, that never did that. So their unit, I believe, is rated at 12, which is pretty much what you got out of a Cruise Air. They did a really nice design. It looks good. I mean, well, it is exactly the same size. It's got the same exact openings in the bottom. It'll sit right wherever that Cruise Air sat, except for that one in the Liberty where we had to change the screws all the
You
time.
know, they tell us a lot of our trouble with a couple of cruise airs have been leaks because they don't have enough coolant in them, they lose the refrigerant out, so then they're high pressure or low pressure. So would replacing the unit not work then if it's in the line somewhere?
It's got a line set leak that needs to be fixed, and I don't know who's putting refrigerant in after they just determined there was a leak. I mean, you just don't
And air conditioning.
you don't just squirt stuff in there, man. You vacuum it down to make sure that, you know, it's gonna hold, you don't have a leak somewhere. And generally, refrigerant guys won't do that because this whole environmental thing that's got them, you know.
Yeah, you know, so many lines in the A's, they're hidden, so we run this little snake up in there trying to find the detector. Just can't find it.
Yeah.
We've got one unit that's constantly going on.
I don't think we've ever had a leak between the indoor and outdoor unit that's in the line set. Fittings, yes, but we've never had a line set leak.
I think on your feather light too, it has some,
Stainless steel.
with some other lines that are real close to the unit to allow them to swivel in and out, and those fittings
Well, we
have been known to
replaced
leak.
a couple of those here on the front, because we got the two in the front, still out. Yeah. But they've been an issue for years.
Yeah, they have stainless steel lines that go from the unit to where it goes inside the coach. And those stainless steel lines, after years, will leak.
The
And
flex
they
lines.
check them there, we
Yeah,
replaced
that's
4.
what I was-
Yeah, flex lines.
we replaced them.
But the
If you
lines
start
that-
to plate, they're, losing fluid on the same issue, it's probably the stainless
Yeah,
steel
the one
line.
is Lincoln, well,
When you're greasing, would be the king pins and also at the belt. So the manual will tell you there, that's where you should see grease coming out.
Yeah, the slip joint on the drive shaft too.
And also, grease is not all created equal. And did Prevost change from going from regular grease to a synthetic grease? Because you don't want to come back and mix those two. And you'll be money down, a lot of money down, especially if you try to change your wheel bearing oil and whatnot, and actually think, I'm gonna go put synthetic in there, and it's got conventional oil in them. You'll destroy your bearings throughout the coach.
That I don't know, but I've never heard that you can't mix the two.
Oh, yeah, no, they'll gel. They will not come together. They'll gel up and you'll have,
And you're talking,
Gelatin in there.
you're talking specifically wheel bearings.
I'm
not-
talking about grease or oil. You can't mix conventional or synthetic together. And if they've switched that, you've been going down to high-low and getting regular grease and pumping it in there, and they're using a synthetic grease in all the wheel bearings now, you'll destroy your front end, everything.
Wheel bearings is totally different than, all the greasing joints. I mean, that's.
Well, right, because they're oil, but if you go, like I say, if you go and try to fill and add a synthetic or a conventional and mix them, if they've switched what they use, they will gel in there and you'll lose your bearings.
I got a question, kind of a rookie question, if you will. I'm trying to figure out, when do you disable your heat pumps? What's the purpose of it?
Oh, that's a marathon thing, nobody else has that. And
Really?
that's-
Okay,
yeah.
but I
And that's-
can't find its functions. I can leave them on or off. I mean, obviously I gotta leave them on in order for the heat pumps to work, but when do you have to turn them off for it?
So in some years or models, that if you did not do that disable when you were using your so-called 12-volt heats or.
Yeah, the ones
monster
that's-
heat,
yeah.
the heat pumps would still come on
Oh, is that right? Well, they fixed it in the thermostats, that, I hit heat twice.
Yeah.
And so it recognized where I'm gonna use that
If
more
you,
heat.
you can also do it by turning off your 4 AC buttons,
Yep.
so that your heat pumps don't come on.
Don't
Just
come
once
on,
your
right,
infrastructure
but
kick.
I think it's irrelevant, they have it on mine, but I can't figure out, I can leave them on and it doesn't affect anything else, air conditioning, doesn't affect heat, my floor heats, I just control it by thermostat, so. I was just
Yeah.
curious.
I'm not sure why they did it that way, because they could have just disabled it anyway.
Right, yeah, I got it, okay, thank you.
Eddie talking about mixing greases. I think engine coolant, people don't know to change out the coolant filter if they change to a. The new organic oat type, that you have to have a filter that has no supplemental coolant additives in it, the water filter, or sure it's zero.
Or a supplement for that coolant. So there is an extended life supplement too.
I've not seen that, but that's after.
Yeah, so engine coolant, the only color that means anything is green, all other colors mean nothing.
Really?
Yeah.
The green goes in my, generator and I put red in it. That's, when I got plus, that's what's being used, so I just
So
continue.
green is the old school, non-extended life coolant. There are non-extended life coolants that are pink and other colors. Napa's non-extended life with SCAs in it is pink.
Okay.
So totally compatible with the green stuff. But anything that's extended life that gets put in one that has non-extended life is not extended life anymore. And that filter cartridge, like Jeff was saying, there's one that has SCAs in it that's for the standard coolant. And then most of the time when somebody switches to extended life, they put, as Jeff pointed out, a blank filter. So it's got a filter in it with no additives. And there are additives that are extended life additives in the filters too, so the whole filter thing is kind of confusing.
It is very good.
So which one do you recommend that we use?
Whatever's in your code.
Right, that's kind of what I'm following. Yours is probably non-SCA.
And I'm not even a big fan about switching the conventional to extended life either. Because extended life is corrosive in air, so that's not what that original system was designed for. A lot of people do it. You know, it changes your change interval from 2 years to 6. But, you know, you do need to test your coolant once a year, just to make sure it's good, especially if it's the conventional stuff, to make sure that it has enough SCAs in it. Lacking SCAs, then the potential is there for cavitation around the cylinders, and it will eat a hole through the cylinders.
Oh, my. Is there a test kit back?
Yeah, there's test strips, and there are 4 of that actually have all the indicators on them.
Amazon product?
Yeah, and the problem with those is most of those are sold in a bottle of like 50, and they have a shelf life.
Right. How often do you change the coolant filter?
Every year, and there's 2 different ones for SCAs too. There's one that's a one shot, and there's one that's time release.
Or the conventional
Yeah.
cooler.
Yeah. That Fleet Guard were running conventional, non-SCA.
Correct. You know, it's interesting, I see a lot of people post, you know, I'm losing coolant so much per year or per trip and all. And I was surprised to see replies, people saying that's normal.
Well,
It's
they say-
indicative of a leak somewhere.
You're leaking it.
Yeah.
They say it's normal because it happens to them too, so.
Right.
There's a lot of plants and a lot of hoses.
There is, and when it gets really cold out, you know, beginning of the cold season, it's like, starting to lose coolant. Yeah, it's probably just a plant.
Good news, everybody leaves here, you can back up and look at your pad and see
Nice
what's
clean
wet.
pad,
Good all new.
But the worst coolant leak you can have is in your heat exchanger for your transmission. That's a very costly issue, because you're pretty much gonna wipe out a transmission.
Oh.
And there's no way to tell. So, if somebody wants to just change their heat exchanger at some time, I don't know what it would be, but
Fluid analysis would capture that, right?
it would show that metal substance in there, but you wouldn't know where it's coming from, because there's more than one place that could be. Oh, you mean if there's actually,
Coolant in the transmission fluid.
yeah, and I don't know anybody that actually tests their coolant. I mean, their transmission fluid, but they probably do. So it is kept as we would expect. And then the transmissions, you know, for a lot of years, have all had Transcend in them. Before that, they didn't. So Transcend's a good thing. Quite frankly, it'll last the life of the coach. That's according to an Allison fluid engineer that built this stuff. Obviously, if you got a Liberty or any other coach with a transmission retarder, it's a little more, it's not as good on the fluid, because obviously your temperatures are gonna be much higher than somebody with a Jake. So,
Yeah, I second that.
Wonder whose dog says
yeah,
that.
who's supposed to be, it's continuing to run. I'm gonna go out there and hook up the utilities and make sure that they all reach, and I got power, and I'm gonna put the slides out, and then I'm gonna shut the coach off.
You're gonna level up, so it's good. You level it before you shut it off?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much have to do that.
Yeah.
And then there's always do you level before or after you put your slides out?
After.
And it depends on
It's
what
two slides
year it
before.
is.
Right.
Prevost manual
I saw
says
so many
slides
responses
first,
to
and
that,
then
you know,
mine
'cause
says level first.
So if you've got pins on the side of your slide, you put your slides out first. If you got the newer slides, Prevost says the level first, but the fact of the matter is it doesn't matter on the newer slides. They're not structural. So the ones with pins on the side, those slides are a structural member of the coach.
One good question for Detroit. After the highway run, cool down, do you let it idle for 2 minutes before you shut it off?
Yeah, because I'm sitting there letting it idle while I'm hooking up.
It could be high idle, is that the same thing or different? Does that count? Or do
High idle's fine by me. If I got a hot engine, I'm sitting for a few minutes, it's in high idle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep the oil pressure up, so that's,
Well, you know, we always did that until recently, and recently diesel mechanics have been telling us, you don't need to put it on high to cool down. So,
you don't.
so it's gonna cool down, it's just going on
Yeah.
as fast as if we have it on, it just sounds.
The only
good on
thing
high.
you're trying to cool down is the turbo.
Yeah.
And everything else is like, who cares? Yeah. Everybody know how to put their slides in if they don't come in when they're supposed to, or as they're supposed to? Those with Prevost slides.
Keep your head phone number handy?
Yeah, so all those Prevost slides, you can bring them in or out manually. So it's good when you're sitting there bored with nothing to do to read chapter 26 of your manual, and actually just have that section available.
Print it out and put
Yeah.
it somewhere. 'Cause-
Yeah.
And jacking points on your bus or.
Yeah,
in
jacking
case-
points are important when you got a tire guy that's coming out to change your tires that ain't got a damn clue. So I've seen many a lower A-arm bent, and the torsion arm from the rear up and forward bent too. So people jacking up the coach to change the tire.
They're not knowing where the jacking points are.
I got you. So that's a good point, where are they?
So on the front, if you look under the front, you'll see the two tow hooks. Yeah, so you can lift there,
That's
and then
where-
once it's up and the weight's suspended, then you can use a regular jack underneath the lower A-arm. There's a pad.
That's good, that's what I do.
To lift the tire, not the coach, to lift the tire off the ground. And then on the back, you'll see there's a rail that runs across that protects the transmission, so if you back into something, it's not gonna hit the transmission. Right at those hard points that go up, you'll see big, like 4x6 steel tubes going up. That's the jack point in the rear,
In the rear, and that is right behind the tag, or?
behind the tire.
Right behind the tag, okay. I've been running up on ramps, built out of 2x12s, 5 layers, stair step them up, so just to get the coach up enough so I can get under it when I'm changing oils and stuff. I haven't gone to a jack yet, but I'm thinking about it.
In the unlikely event that you need a wrecker, and the wrecker says, where do I hook up the air? You should know.
Oh, if he says that, he's out. I'm not even gonna let him touch it.
I'm gonna tell you, some of the big guys wouldn't know that because they're not moving that many buses. So if you're not in a place with a lot of buses, they may not know.
Yeah. I just called Bill Gaggiana and he sent somebody.
So you know where that fitting is? It's back in the engine bay. But it's not, depending on how far you're being towed, that's not necessary. So the reason that they're hooking air up to that is to make sure that you don't lose air on your brakes and your brake supply. That's the only reason they do it. It's not to brake the coach or to keep the suspension up or anything else. So, know where that is? They're running a hose all the way down the side of your coach. It's terrible. Most of them that are good guys will have rags and straps or something to put them around your bay doors. But yeah, that's hanging that hose all the way down the side of your coach. On a long tow, that's pretty nasty. And do make sure that wrecker operator has whatever it takes to lift your coach. Oftentimes, if you got a towing service, they're not dispatching the right size because it costs too much money. They will a second time when you call them back up. But make sure you call that, when you're talking to that towing company, make sure that they understand that you're 52,000 pounds or whatever you are, and that you're gonna need that kind of equipment. Ideally, they come out with one that's got cradles to lift the wheels, but that's not important. Because the modern equipment will have the adapters to go into those tow hooks up on the front. There's no reason you can't just lift it and tow it from that either.
Is there anything they have to disconnect?
So they have to take an axle out or take the drive shaft off. And most of them don't have a cover for where that axle was, so they'll take a piece of cardboard on it and, put a couple screws in it or whatever, or nuts back on it, but.
I carry one.
You might have a mess when you get to where you're going, but.
What do you suggest carrying in there?
Like,
I carry a template. It's a 3/4 inch piece of plywood with the holes in it. So unfortunately, because I have been told once.
Yeah. And some of these guys will crawl under there and pull the drive shaft out too. They're nuts, but they will.
No, that's nuts.
I know they raise it very high.
So pull the axle, and you've got a template made that you can put back. I'll show it to you, yeah. Oh, yeah. Sometimes I don't have it, I'm gonna have it. I don't want all that mess going out.
Either side.
don't make.
They do actually make a cover for that, it's sold for wrecker services.
Yeah.
So that they can maintain those, and it's not one size fits all. But, you know, if you really wanted to carry one, or if you really wanted to make one, you could do so. It doesn't take more than a piece of cardboard with some.
That's right.
Put the nuts back on.
Yeah.
It's much easier to do that. like you
Yeah, I said
about
3/4,
wreckers.
mine's not, it's like 3/8, it's pretty thin, it's just, but it's plywood.
So everybody that's got wet hubs, so that would be the drive and the tag axle, so that's prior to 2003 or 4. Ever take the cover off and see your lube levels? Yeah, so that's another thing you should periodically do. Now, mind you, if they're leaking, you're probably gonna see evidence of that without pulling the cover off. Well, you do need to get those fixed. Mind you, those two don't have a whole hell of a lot of lubricant in there, so it doesn't take too much of a leak before that's an issue. Easy way in the front, very front.
You gotta go in through the front door, through the door?
You know, from the back, left side of the engine, look way up there, and you'll see it.
It's kind of on level with the bottom of the airbag, just continue a straight line. And it may be real greasy in there and hard to see, and it's difficult to reach.
I think I missed that one.
Yeah, and if that one doesn't get lubed, then you'll get enough play in there that you could, and I've seen it start losing belts.
But it's not,
Yeah. And of course, always carry spare belts, because, you know, they're not common necessarily.
They're not easy to put on by yourself either, though.
It's better to have it for a tech to use than to have a tech that can't find a part. No inverter questions, awesome.
No, you just get Victron.
Brake cans, when do you suggest they be changed? We were told after 10 years you should change it.
I think there's actually a time for the commercial guys, but I don't remember what it is. And it's a time that's way, way too short. But most people don't do it unless they're leaking. They're doing the bleed down test, and that's when they're gonna determine that, I got a leak.
So this trucker friend said if they go, one of two things happens. One, your brakes come on, and then you're dragging brakes, or the brakes don't come on at all. Either case is bad. So
I'm not sure how they can come on.
He said they lock up.
I see that on the highway, you know, where there's a
If
skid
you
mark in the
apply
truck.
brakes
The skid marks that you see on the side of the road is generally because the lines between the tractor and the trailer came loose and the trailer brakes locked up.
Yep.
That's almost all those. But if your diaphragm is blown or leaking, the only thing you can't do, and it's pretty important, is you can't put pressure on your brakes. But it's not like it's gonna put pressure on them otherwise.
So never go wrong. They'll never go back. We never have to replace them.
Well, I'll tell you, many of
That was
them
the
get
brake line.
replaced because, you know, they might go to Destin or something. They're by the beach, and they rust out.
All roads?
Don't all roads go to this.
Start the engine and it doesn't come up, you plug it in, it doesn't come up, you gotta get the voltage to those inverters. That's not all of them, but that's most of them.
On that note, as a newbie, when I bought my coach 2.5 years ago, the guy said the inverter is set and you probably never need to mess with it. But what are some common examples of when you need to mess with it?
Never. If it ain't fixed.
Yeah, I mean, I was sweating mine when I got it, had all these buttons and lights and stuff, and like, leave it alone. I've never done it.
I guess it's time now, Locke was saying, for the
We got
people showing up for the service and
If you have to go from 50
advertising.
amps.
So thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.